Welcome to the Zyra Masterclass for today. So we will just jump right into it, doing some simple things, and then we'll go over some stuff.
Warning.
So let's, without further ado, just jump right into it, right? So first off, we'll start off by talking a little bit about itemization and kind of understanding itemization for this champion right now. So there's kind of two ways to play the champion, which is more poke oriented or more front loaded. So basically our itemization is going to reflect our rune setup. So we'll kind of do them hand in hand when it comes to our build setup. So right here, as you can see right here, for rune setups, number one is going to be, we'll just tie it together. We'll tie it together, which is going to be the poke one. So for our poke build, we kind of have, we'll do it right under here. So for our poke build, we're running Comet, Mana Flow, Transcendence, Scorch, and then your secondary is either Resolve with Conditioning, Overgrowth. This is for whenever you play against things that want to kill you, all in you. You can substitute this for Bone Plating if you really need to, for like laning phase matchups. So for any time you maybe play against like a Leona, an Alistar, a Thresh, etc. Maybe you're concerned about being all in. This is kind of the secondary you run. Or Inspiration with Biscuits plus Biscuits plus what is it called again? Time Warp Tonic. That was what it was. Time Warp Tonic. This is great against poke lanes. So pretty much the way I distinguish the two of them is I'll take this rune setup if I'm ever against things that want to poke back. Lots of trading in my lane. Maybe I'm against like a Lulu Caitlyn, a Yumi lane. Usually you're usually only running this rune setup. This is mostly a lane specific one, whereas kind of the resolve tree is kind of better out of laning phase and more just whatever in lane. This page is mostly just so that you can crush lane, or if you have like a really hard matchup that pokes you out a lot. Yumi, for example, maybe against like a Vel'Koz, something that outranges you and causes problems, gives you a lot of extra sustain for your laning matchup. Now, a lot of people probably have the question of is, what about the domination tree? I found that in general, I'm not too big of a fan of this tree just because of the fact that whatever you could get in Taste of Blood and Relentless Hunter or Ultimate Hunter, you can pretty much get in the Biscuits and Time Warp Tonic. Plus, one thing that's actually really nice about this is when you back and you buy a refillable potion, it actually allows you to have an extra bit of movement speed while in laning phases. You can kind of see right here, it gives you 5% movement speed while you're healing from the potion. Plus, it also allows you to kind of swing your trades a lot. If you're ever relatively low on HP and maybe you aren't running a pot the entire time, being able to use your biscuit or pot to instantly get 50% of the health allows you to all of a sudden have a surge of HP, which then allows you to maybe take bigger trades or even bait out, all-ins or something like that when you're playing against poke champions. So I like this page a lot. And this goes in combination with kind of like a poke-oriented build. So this is usually Lucidity Boots. We're gonna be running the burn item, and then after that, we're gonna be running like multiple oriented burn items. So for itemization, you'll be going Leandries as your mythic item right here. So we go Leandries here, and then you have a couple of options. Now, one thing that I've experienced in a lot of games is I was doing Cosmic Drive as a second item, which is pretty good and will give you a lot of CDR, but sometimes there's some redundancy built into it where you don't need that much CDR, even though you can infinitely poke. So for whatever reason, if you find yourself in situations where a lot of people are either diving on you, or there's just a lot of really tanky champions that have built a lot of HP, you can go Demonic Embrace second. And then afterwards, you kind of do the whatever you didn't build second, third. And then after that is Void Staff. This is what you'll finish off kind of your build path for all of that. So this is kind of like the full Comet poke-oriented build. It's the build I pretty much exclusively run all the time. I much prefer this build just in general, just because it adds a level of consistency. It makes your poke really strong. If you're there for neutral objectives first, it's really good. You're able to shave off a lot of HP on people. Plus, it's really easy to win lane if you're doing a good job harassing people with your plants. And so this is the page that I mostly exclusively run. But there is another page that you can run, and I want to tackle that real quick, which is going to be the electrocute build. So this is kind of like an all-in combo thing. So this basically is under the premise that your poking isn't nearly as important to you, so you're taking something looking like this. Maybe you decide to opt into cheap shot if there's not nearly as much healing that you need to do in your lane phase. And then your secondary rune page is usually something like Transcendence and Mana Flow, just because it solves a lot of your mana problems in the lane phase. Plus, ability haste, even if you're not trying to stack it fully, is still really great for your team. And for you to to constantly spam your plants and harass people still. This is mostly predicated on kind of your root ulti combo. It's great to take against, maybe an all-in lane that you're not convinced you're going to be able to poke out too much, and you just want to have a lot of front-loaded damage in case they all-in you. So champions like Nautilus, Thresh, Leona, things that are going to run into you, you want front-loaded damage. And this build will actually do more one-shotting, but it won't be able to allow you to score as much poke. You won't be able to get as much poke, much harass. You're going to be kind of like a one and done in terms of your power level. So it is really important that your root ulti combo gets off like really good value when you take a page like this. And for the itemization, you're basically just going to kind of lean into it by going for one-shots. So for itemization, instead of going Lucidity Boots, we're going to be going Sorcerer Shoes, which is kind of the generic things for most people. Now, one thing to note is if you, for whatever reason, get super far ahead and you're doing a poke build, Sorcerer Shoes are still not bad on this champion, but it is a little bit better to go Lucidity Boots for the overarching build, just because of the fact that it gives you a better power spike at just your boots itself, and you're not going to be building any spell pen, so if anyone goes any magic resistance, your damage will be depreciated by a lot. So that's why there's kind of a differentiation between the two. Plus, Lucidity Boots lean well into Liandry's because you're just spawning plants and poking people down and leaning on the burn a lot. So that's why we go Lucidity Boots with this build. But for this one, we're one-shotting, we want to go Sorcerer Shoes just to get the maximum amount of magic pen for front-loaded damage, because it combos in really well with our mythic item, which is Ludens. And as you can kind of see right here, Ludens' passive gives you magic pen, and the item itself gives you magic pen. So like I said before, magic pen is a compounding stat, so you're going to be building Ludens Echo just so that you have compounding damage so that you can one-shot people. These two together go really, really well together, because anyone who isn't building any magic resist will basically be reduced to kind of close to, if not zero, magic resist kind of after you get one or two more items. So really powerful combination. It still makes your poke not too bad too, because you'll be getting the ability damage proc from your plants, etc. So it's not useless in that way too, but it has a longer cooldown, as you can kind of see right here, whereas Liandry's, one of the perks of the item itself is it has no cooldown at all. So a plant switch targets and hits another person, boom, both of them have burn, whereas Ludens Echo is only going to be hitting one person at a time and then going on cooldown, which is why Lucidity Boots or like stacking CDR isn't nearly as good with this build. After that, you actually just go Void Staff. Void Staff is actually so efficient and so powerful that even if a player has 0 magic resist, the percent pen and the ability power for how much gold you spend is so efficient that it gives you an insane amount of damage. So you just go Void Staff afterwards, and then you can kind of go whatever you want as your set third and fourth item. So Death Cap isn't unreasonable if you have money. You can go Demonic Embrace. If you need healing reduction, you can go Zonia's. If you need healing reduction, you can go Morellonomicon. This one's a lot more flexible after the second item. This is just mostly important to note that you go Sorcs Shoes, Ludens Echo, Void Staff. We're one-shotting people. And so that's kind of how this build ends up going out for most people. 2 questions for builds. Yeah, sure.
I will just talk for that.
Yeah, sure.
First, what do you think about Horizon Focus on Zyra?
I think that the item itself costs way too much money compared to where else you could put your money, and the amount of bonus damage is actually really low. So, like, 10% bonus damage is really not that much, and 3,000 gold, like, if you compare it to other items that are, like, close to that, so you can compare it to, like, Demonic, you're really only getting about 40 or 45 extra ability power, and the damage, most games that I've kind of paid attention to for Horizon Focus, this item literally does no damage. It does 200, 300-ish damage, like, in full games. Even when it's built, like, relatively early as a second item on champions, like, you would think would do well, like Zoe, for example. So I think that this item is only good if you can jam a Death Cap in as a third item, and on a support economy, it's too expensive. You can't get the value of, like, the actual raw AP nearly as much. Plus, a champion like Zyra actually doesn't even utilize AP that well because her base numbers are really high, but her ratios actually aren't really as good. That's why having, like, the procs, like the Demonic Embrace or the Liandry's, etc., accelerates her damage so much more because of the fact that her base numbers are so good that the AP that, like, maybe you're not building isn't as important as, like, the burn damage, for example.
Okay, thank you. Second question, when you're up against many squishies and you've gone the sorcery tree with Comet, and you're starting to get really ahead, would you consider going the pen route with Sorc shoes and Ludens?
Yeah, it's totally a reasonable build. In general, you'll have significantly less poke, but you will be able to one-shot people even without electrocute. In fact, honestly, like, electrocute's mostly just a guiding light. In terms of, oh, I want to front load, so then we'll do this. You can actually mix and match these builds pretty easily just because they both work reasonably well. Kind of like how I touched on, oh, Ludens Echo still procs, you know, some poke, not even if it's not as much as Liandry's. So yeah, if you're playing a game, let's say, like, you're the only magic damage or whatever, the enemy team stacking a bunch of armor, yeah, and you get a couple of kills early, you buy Sorc shoes instead. You can go the Ludens Echo build, it's totally fine. It's not unreasonable to do at all, and you can kind of mix and match these pretty easily, and the champion actually utilizes all of the items very well.
Yeah, the other way around is probably not ideal. Going electric
yeah.
with Liandry's, yeah.
Yeah, if you go electrocute Liandry's, then you're kind of fucked a lot more often than not. Whereas the Comet build kind of has a lot more flexibility because you're still getting a lot of damage proc from everything. Plus, another thing that's really great about the Comet build too is your plants actually hitting players actually counts towards the spells hitting players. So right here, if we look at this right here, so one thing about Comet is you can see this right here, cooldown reduction for single target, area effect, damage over times, etc. So if you're hitting people with multiple spells, it puts it, you know, it continuously reduces cooldown. So yeah, your plants actually reduce the cooldown, which is what makes it so good in terms of poking, but it also is great for all laning too. Then we will do the Caitlyn, Lulu, and the Twitch Thresh then. Then we'll just do some lane phase breakdowns of what we want to be doing for lane, kind of the mechanics that go into that, those kinds of things. That's basically what we're looking for when it comes to laning. So, number one thing, anytime you're playing Zyra, by the way, a good fundamental thing to always have is ask where your jungler is going to start, like relatively early. You'll see me a lot of times when I do play Zyra, I'll ping my jungler and just ask him where he starts. If he's going to start on your side, then you can spawn plants there. Otherwise, what you'll see pretty commonly is if I don't have to leash, I'm already sitting in lane and spawning plants. And the reason for this is just obviously because if you can get trades with plants at level 1, it's basically like you're level 2 without actually needing level 2. So it gives you a lot more extra pressure and leverage in the lane. An important thing to note too is just paying attention to where plants are. So as you can kind of see right here, and one thing that's going to be really prevalent in general is learning how to abuse hitboxes with your Q. So one thing that'll be common when you end up watching a lot of my laning phase stuff is I shoot my Qs in a way that spawn plants but also hit players. So you can kind of see right here, I've got 2 plants here and I've got a plant here. So that means when they approach, whatever angle they take, I want to hit them with my Q and spawn the plant at the same time. And even if they walk away afterwards, that's totally fine because my plant will hit the minions and we'll get the push. And if you're getting the push on Zyra, you're already at a huge advantage because it's just so easy for you to poke under turret. And this is also, by the way, a game where we're going to be taking the Biscuits and Cosmic Insight, which we'll be talking about a little bit as the game goes on. So as you see right here, you kind of see, look at the hitbox. So like actually my Q doesn't hit anything, but because the hitbox is actually bigger than what it shows visually, it's going to spawn both of these plants. Learning how to spawn plants while also hitting players is going to be the most important skill that you want fundamentally for the lane, because then both plants spawn and we're already hitting the enemy players, and see how they've been forced away, and now we already have the plants pushing for me. Same thing again, spawning the plants, hitting them with the Q, and DPSing them. Another trick too, by the way, is that the way the targeting works for Zyra plants is they'll hit players if there's nothing else in range besides the players. So making sure that you like kind of jam your seeds or spells into corners is really, really helpful. So for example, like right here-ish when the Lulu approaches, you see how like there's all the minions are over here. So even if I just press Q and I don't hit this player, the plant will auto-target the Lulu because of the fact that there's no minions around. This is a pretty core fundamental factor for just playing Zyra in general, because a lot of times what you want to do is it's okay to not actually hit the player with the Q. The Q is relatively inexpensive in terms of your mana, and Q procs everything. Procs your Scorch, procs your Mana Flow, procs your Comet. All really good spells and abilities for cycling things down. So if you don't really know what you want to do, or maybe you just don't have an opportunity to fully walk up and hit Qs on people, then we just want to always be making sure that we're at least keeping the Comet and the Mana Flow on cooldown. Another thing to note too, and a cool trick in general, wherever your plants spawn, sometimes what people will do is they'll walk over it to get rid of your plant. This is actually the best time and easiest time for you to harass people, is when they walk over them. This isn't one of those circumstances, but just something to always keep in mind is if you have a seed and it looks like someone's walking over the seed that's, you know, spawned randomly in your lane, then just doing that will also help you a lot, where you can just, QW, and even though they're running over your plant that's already there, we're shooting the QW and making sure that they're just getting harassed. And we just see, as we can kind of see, right, we've created so much pressure in a lane that you actually are supposed to get outranged in. You know, Caitlyn is supposed to harass you, outrange you, make it really hard. So we kind of just see here, we're always playing around where our seeds are and trying to combo them together. So you see right here, there's a seed right there. So I'm going to play through that and try to make sure that I'm queuing and spawning the plant and spawning another plant. This will allow you to kind of cut down on seed usage in the laning phase and still be able to create a lot of pressure. So right here, the Lulu actually walks way too far forward, and we're just going to hit whoever we can. So making sure that we don't dump spells chasing anybody is really, really important. A thing to note too is just about space control. So as the Lulu walks forward, even if my Q doesn't hit the player, by having a plant in this location, I've secluded her. And remember that the melee minions dying on this wave actually guarantees us level 3. You can just kind of see it through the bar. So I shoot my Q over here, and once the Lulu is secluded, and you see how much further away the Caitlyn is than the Lulu because the Lulu's too far up, we can just turn and start hitting people. A thing to note about the kind of plant mechanic too is if you spawn a plant and it doesn't hit someone via the Q or the E, you can still auto-attack them, and that will cause the plant to hit them. So you see right here, like if we auto-attack, if the plant's not dead, then they can just get focused by the plant also. And so we're just going to immediately dump our Ignite because we know we're going to hit level 3. But the thing is Lulu's already too far out. So we'll just take the advantage in terms of HP that we have and just switch targets and hit whoever we can. A thing to note that you kind of see me not doing too is I'm not using my Q until my seeds are up. Making sure that we're always comboing those two together. That way we're just consistently being able to create pressure and get good value off of our spells. Now, since of the fact that we actually have been getting really good trades, as you can kind of see, they're super low on HP. We're super good on HP. A lot of it's actually thanks in part to the biscuits, kind of helping all of our mana and such. We're able to actually set up a potential dive on them. They have to scoop back. And then anytime that they go for last hits, we're just shooting spells at them and trying to harass them as much as possible. Constantly spawning plants whenever we can, and just making sure we're auto-attacking. These are all important things to be doing. Now, since they're stuck under the turret, but people are coming over, we want to just hit the minions and start getting the push going at the same time, so that it's just way easier for our teammates to die. As After that, we dump all of our spells, and our teammates kind of just int it, but we've actually been able to kill them both under the turret and actually make them miss a ton of EXP and gold. On top of that, we're going to just trade out our flashes for the jungler, because for the most part, we should have a huge sums and HP advantage over our lane opponents, just because of the fact that we've been pressuring them the entire time. After that, we just snare whoever is coming out, and since our Ezreal has already died, we're out scot-free. A lot of what I want you to take away from kind of the laning phase from the early stages is mostly just paying attention to spawning plants and getting good harass off that way. And this is also another reason why I'm a big fan of the Lucidity boots, because as you can kind of see here already, it's actually pretty common for you to not have enough money if you're trying to buy sorcerer shoes to buy consumables in laning phase. So as you can see here, I was able to get my Lucidity boots and get refillable potion. So because of that, we're going to be able to have a lot more sustain in trading. I recommend that a lot of times you value the refillable potion a lot, especially if you're going to run Time Warp Tonic, just because it gives you the movement speed immediately, and it will allow your pots to heal you. But on top of that, it's also really great just because of the fact that you're probably going to be trading a lot anyway, so getting the extra sustain is super helpful. And anytime that ganks happen, you can kind of see it happening right here. We want to just always scoot back and spawn plants wherever we're going. So a player is coming in right here. We see the seed that spawns, so we spawn another plant, and we're just constantly harassing and just scooting back over and over again. Whenever ganks happen, try to always pay attention to wherever your passive is spitting out plants, and then put a plant on top of that too. It will allow you to deter people a lot. Even if you're getting 2 ranged plants that, that do a little bit reduced damage since there's 2 of them hitting the same target, it's usually a deterrent because most people will be scared to run through them. Plus, also, they do decent amounts of damage. And we just score an easy kill just because of good brush control, summoner advantage, and because of the fact that we're comboing correctly. So one thing that I want to talk about is just comboing in general, because I don't think I touched on it very good. So number one is actually just brush control in general. As a good rule of thumb, whenever you're playing champions that have skill shots, shooting your skill shots from brushes is always better because it's just harder for people to react because they can't see the spell coming nearly as much. Another thing to note too, though, is whenever you're looking for combos, you don't want to actually double plant someone in most cases. So whenever you're looking for a root, we want 1 root plant. So you shoot the E and then you spawn the plant. That's actually a mechanic that's really important. So anytime you're using abilities, you're always Wing second because you don't have an animation for it. It's actually just a free animation. So always take advantage of this. So you see right here, I've E'd and I've now spawned a plant with my W. So we're only using 1 plant. After this connects, then what you want to do is use our Q and W here, so that way the ranged plant is DPSing the entire time. As you can see, the melee plant is hitting them and slowing them, and then the ranged plant has a lot of workable ground to actually harass them. Plus, another thing to note is that if you're using 1 ranged plant, 1 melee plant, neither of them mitigate each other because they're not actually double dipping, because there's a diminishing return on each plant hitting somebody. So because of that, we actually get full damage from both of our plants, and it just guarantees a kill instantly. After that, we're just ending the trade by making sure that we're just getting a good amount of auto attacks in and spawning the Q plant on top of that. So that's kind of like what we're looking for when it comes to comboing when our laning phase is kind of breaking down. And this guarantees us a lot more pressure and a lot more harass in our laning phase setups. So even though we're actually playing a matchup where, you kind of get outranged and you can have some trouble, this is a great example of how you can actually play, once you establish a push, how you can play with that push and harass people under the turret and always get a huge HP advantage. And you kind of see right here that now that I have the push, it's so much easier for me to harass because I can just always spawn plants whenever he's going for last hits. And because of the fact that, remember, plants target minions or whatever's closest, so once you have no minions in the way, it's just easier for you to harass. So you kind of see right here, the wave is coming in, he has to walk up, and this is just forcing him away from a ton of CS. Plus, Zyra has a really expensive build, so being able to work on some plates, get that quest done as soon as possible, get the extra plate gold, etc., will help you accelerate yourself into the mid game way more. And we want that as much as possible. And then you can kind of see right here, we're just looking for any harass that we can get using our ultimate under the turret just to trade HP out. One thing to note is if you do opt into the Lucidity Boots and you run Transcendence, the extra, the extra ability haste, all of that jazz, your ultimate cooldown is actually incredibly short. 60 to 80 seconds is insanely low for laning phase, so you actually don't even have to feel bad about potentially just using it for an all-in. On average, it takes you about 45 seconds to get back to lane after you've started channeling your recall, because it's 8 seconds to recall and then 30 seconds to walk, plus you're usually recovering some HP. So almost half of the time that you would normally have on your ultimate, as you can kind of see right here, is completely eaten up by just the fact that you are walking back to lane. So as you can kind of see right here, we've already made it back to lane, and our ulti is already back up despite using it under the turret, which is also a huge advantage of it, just because of the fact that we can constantly use our spells as much as we possibly can. And then as said before, we want to make sure that we have brush control as much as possible, so we're just walking up, he's walking up, we're hitting him with his plants, and we've already done like over 200 damage to him just through his shields and his HP bar to harass him under the turret. One thing to note too is we want to make sure that we just have at least decent vision. So you can kind of see here, I went out and got a ward here. I have a ward in the river. So we're actually pretty hard to gank in most cases, especially when I think sometimes what people have trouble with is when they're pushing, they're very susceptible to getting ganked. A lot of it is just kiting backwards and spawning plants as you're kiting backwards and paying attention to your passive. And that will allow you to actually deflect a lot of ganks that normally should work, but because you're Zyra, it's kind of like a Heimerdinger effect. If you treat your seeds as, turrets in that regard, then you'll usually be in okay shape. And then we have a skirmish that happens here. We actually flash and use our ignite and our ulti, but we actually don't kill anyone here in this regard, so mostly just an unfortunate thing. But they're all out of summoners again, and they're just stuck under the turret, so we can just continuously harass them and keep playing for plates. And that's ideally what we want is we want to be laning as much as possible, where we just keep our opponents stuck under the turret and play for plates. Because if you're doing that, then you're playing with, 400 or 500 extra gold, especially if you get the turret and all 5 plates. And that will get you your item way faster. Plus, on top of that, a lot of times what will happen is if you're playing for plates, you can usually either score kills under the turret or draw people's attention to your lane. And we always want a game where there's lots of kills going on, just because of the fact that it will allow you to be trading lives and injecting gold into yourself. And that's kind of what we want on Zyra. We actually don't want an inactive game, because your item is just too expensive to have an inactive game on a support budget. You're on kind of food stamps in a lot of ways. So you can kind of just see now that we have the push, now that we're able to harass under the turret, get HP advantage, just poking wherever we can, utilizing our plants, etc., we can just infinitely push with mana flow. So anytime he walks up, that's actually a great example of what I was originally talking about. So you can kind of use seeds as a baiting tool for stuff. So you kind of see right here, he wants to clear out the seed. Perfect. That means you know exactly where he's walking. My W comes up. Boom, you can Q and W somebody and instantly harass them and gain pressure on the lane. Just your Q and W, even at level 1, is going to do 150, 200 damage potentially if you have Comet, etc. So you can actually lean on your base damages a lot when it comes to harassing people. And after that, we kind of just are able to, with the huge HP advantage, keep burning down the turret and get hit by a spear and die, and then cry. But that's mostly how we want laning phases to look. Make sure that we're playing with our seeds immediately in the early stages, and just forcing them under the turret is really kind of the core fundamental thing that we want to look for in all of our laning phases. And a lot of the easy ways to do that is to get seeds in the lane, and the easy way to get seeds in the lane is by asking our teammate, hey, where are you starting? And if they're starting on the other side, then make sure to just be getting to the lane and at least spawning seeds in the middle of the lane so that you can kind of leverage that. So now we'll be jumping over into the second one, which is going to be our Thresh and Twitch versus Zyra and Ezreal. So we're actually playing with a champion I would say is not that great with Zyra, because he doesn't help push. So we're actually having to do a lot of the leaning in terms of pushing by ourselves. So this is actually a pretty good example of it. So we're going to be playing against an all-in lane this time. Lots of gank setup, lots of harass, etc. And we're just going to utilize all of our seeds. So as you can see right here, we just trade out our Q, it instantly spawns all 4 plants, and that just guarantees us the immediate push. And that's going to be kind of like our theme in most cases, is making sure we get our immediate push. Now, a quick reminder too is make sure that anytime that you have the opportunity to, make sure you're auto-attacking. Kind of see me there walking up, hitting him a couple of times. Anyone who's shorter range than you, you definitely want to make sure you're barraging with auto-attacks, because they basically do the same as, you know, your Scorch or your Comet proc, and all of those are really useful, and we want to think about it like in a compounding system. The more damage that you get compounded on somebody, the more value you can get on each of your pieces of poke, because it brings them lower to HP. So main things to note too is just paying attention to where our seeds are. So you can kind of see right here, here's a seed. We walk up, we spawn the seed on another seed. And at that point in time, because we have such a huge HP lead, if the Thresh doesn't do something immediately, he actually is going to lose the lane. So he ends up trying to trade out our flashes, which he ends up doing successfully, but now we can just continuously poke him and harass him as much as possible. Since we see our jungler on the top side too, we want to make sure that we're just getting a ward out early so that we don't die to any jungle ganks. Pretty much the worst thing that you can kind of have happen in most of your matchups is if you die early. Because if you die early, then you usually can't push the lane. And if you can't push the lane, we can't harass under the turret. And if you can't harass under the turret, you can't get HP leads. It's kind of like a compounding thing. And then this is a great example of, you know, if there are no minions, we can spawn and harass people, spawn plants and harass people on the outside. This is great for actually retaking brush control too. So you kind of see right here, I spawned the plant really far out into the side. We have mana flow up, our Comet is up, etc. And just our plant auto-attacking him a couple of times, like right there, it's going to do almost 100 damage to him just because of, you know, the Scorch and the Comet, etc. So all good things for that. And then our AD carry gets hooked and he ends up losing a lot of his HP. But we dump our Ignite down and we actually trade a lot of HP down. So anytime that a hook or a CC occurs onto our teammates, make sure that you're walking forward and dealing damage on the return. So kind of like right here, we're scooting back, making sure that we don't get hooked or anything like that. The hook does connect, so that pretty much tells me I'm going to end up having to fight here. You can kind of see myself walking back into this fight. We spawn our plant, and we're just going to auto-attack. So as you can see right here, by the way, the plant actually started hitting the Thresh, but because I auto-attacked, plants will prioritize your auto-attack even if a Q hits. So this is a way for you to actually control how the plants work and how their AI works. So we auto-attack him, we dump the Ignite, and you can kind of see me, I'm just scooting back a little bit, but I'm still hitting him the whole time, pushing him back and getting a huge HP lead. So even though that my AD carry may have lost a lot of his HP, their AD carry is incredibly low on HP too. So now we're kind of just fighting for the wave, and we're waiting for all of our abilities to come back up so we can push them out of lane if they walk forward. And as you can see right here, no minions again. Get the Q off, hits him right here, and does a ton of extra damage to him. And our jungler is swinging down. Because of this, we now have control of the wave, and we can spawn a plant and just harass whoever. And so we end up using our snare on the Thresh, and we're just constantly auto-attacking him, barraging him with as many autos as possible. After that, we're going to just keep chasing down. Now, what we want to make sure we do in these kinds of skirmishing areas is make sure that our pathing makes sense. So as you can see right here, our Cassiopeia is coming from the top, but everyone else on the enemy team is already here. You know, we've killed the Thresh now, but our AD carry is dead. Our Rek'Sai is over the wall, and there's 3 people on top of me. So rather than going through here, what we want to do is we want to go down and around to get out. So you see me, I'm just auto-attacking the whole time, and in an unusual fashion, we're going to actually spawn both plants here to score a kill. Reminder that when you score kills, it reduces the cooldown of your W, so I'm just doing this to guarantee the kill because I don't know if a plant's going to kill him. So you see, we've killed a player, boom, our seed is back up. So now we walk through our own plants, we spawn a melee plant, we're auto-attacking him, hitting him a bunch, and that forces him out. And this causes the fact that the Twitch ran down and fought us to isolate the Sejuani, and we actually guarantee all of that skirmish win. And then after that, we're going to reset again, and you kind of see this pristine buy at about 1100 gold that we love to get, which is going to be our Lucidity Boots and Refillable. Now, I'm not running Cosmic Insight in this, or Biscuits and Time Warp Tonic, but Refillable Potion is still really great just because it gives you so much sustain, and every time you use it, it's basically building gold on your economy because it's 250 health, which is almost 2 health potions, which is 100 gold every time that you're going to back and reset and use your potions. And if you're playing Zyra correctly, you're usually trading a decent amount, so we want to make sure that we're just staying healthy as much as possible. After that, the wave is kind of pushing out, so we're just going to blow out the wave completely, as you can kind of see on our mini-map. The duo is actually sitting mid. So we're just going to play greedily and play for plates. A lot of times what people will end up doing is they'll try to respond to plays that are already too late to. A lot of times what I'll end up doing is just playing for myself and playing for gold. So right here, you know, the wave was pushing out, and I'm not going to respond to the players who are doing stuff mid. Rather, just stay here and work on plates. So you kind of see already, we've gotten 2 plates, you know, over 100 gold on our quest. And now we have the push advantage too, that we can keep them tackled under the turret. So we're just looking for any harass that we can get and hitting the turret anytime we possibly can, while also playing around our plants. So, oh, there's a seed right there. Boom, we can spawn that and harass the Thresh that's trying to walk forward and space him out of our fight. Then after that, we're just going to defend our pink ward as much as possible because we're not actually needed on the dragon. So you kind of see right here, we're spawning seeds. Our seeds are coming back up thanks to Lucidity Boots, and we're just going to keep them paralyzed in the lane as much as possible and harass them under the turret. And then after that, what ends up happening is because we've gotten such good harass on them, we've now completed the dragon. We're between the 2 lanes, and our Rek'Sai can just go on whoever. We just use our Q and immediately score a kill on the player right there. And actually, because I don't want to run through the jungler right there, I actually run through the turret, we run our potions, and once again, playing around our seeds, right? Playing around our seeds, making sure that we're cutting back through them, and just leveraging them to make sure they keep us safe. One thing to note too, though, is when you do harass under the turret, you do need to be mindful of your Scorch. That's basically one of the reasons why you kind of see me walking back every once in a while when we first initially harass people, because your Scorch is going to proc, and that's going to proc turret aggro for the first second. Now, because of the fact that our Cassiopeia kind of swung down here, we're just able to, despite the jungler being down here, play aggressively. And one of the perks of, you know, being able to have a lot of seed spawn is we're just constantly harassing him under the turret, which is also why I'm a big fan of the mana flow, because before you get your Lost Chapter, you can run into some mana problems, but with mana flow, that solves a lot of it. As you can kind of see right here, we're able to spam our spells like quite frequently. Now, one thing to notice is anytime that you want to push in the wave, one of the main perks of actually putting the points in E is you clear the wave very fast. So you saw me right there. We put the E through there. It's the ranged minions, and it just kind of blows out the wave instantly, which allows you to control waves a lot better and move around the map. So anytime you force people out of lane, but you want to stay for an extra wave, this is a great way of you just, instantly converting your advantage, because you can basically do kind of like a Sivir Q through the wave and guarantee pressure in that sense. Now, after that, really good habit to always have is whenever you complete your quest, run mid. We want to make sure we're establishing some vision around mid to make sure that we're keeping mid safe. It also allows you to see if anyone is roaming to mid, but also from mid. So you can kind of see right here through our tri-bush, right here on the mini-map, that the support might be walking over here. So I'm just chilling right now since I know the wave is crashing onto bottom, and just trying to deflect plays as much as we can, because I want to make sure that my mid laner is nice and safe. So we just spawn our plants, scoot back, and we actually get a decent amount of harass on them. They're missing, a couple hundred HP already. So that means when we go back to lane, they're just going to be missing all that HP, and it gives us a huge advantage. So we also ward through the river just so that we can see if, Thresh tries to push out the wave and run up and down the river, or if their mid laner moves, because, our mid laner reset. So we want to make sure that we're keeping track of that. And as you can see right here, because of the fact that we just have a huge level advantage thanks to our good laning phase, it's really hard for them to force on us at this point in time. And once you get over this threshold where it's very difficult for the enemy team to force on you, you can kind of control the pacing of the game and how fights work. So as you can see right here, once again, have good brush control, wait for the enemy player to walk up, and then we just use our snare right here with one plant, use our Q, ulti, and that's going to instantly force his flash and heal, and at that point in time, we can no longer lane once again, and it just gives us so much more pressure. Getting kills in lane is really good, but the most important thing really that you should be focusing on is just trying to work down the plates. Not only does it give you a huge influx of gold for you as the support that you normally don't get access to, but it actually puts your AD carry super far ahead. And when your AD carry is super far ahead, it means you can play more aggressive and take more fights, and it's a lot harder for the enemy bot lane to just all-in you randomly. Even in some circumstances where you maybe get hooked or flash flayed, etc., if your AD carry is really strong, then you'll end up being able to trade out kills really well. One thing to note too is I want you guys to learn a new mechanic, which is how turrets target stuff. So what I mean by that is that turrets will target your plants first after they've untargeted whatever. So you kind of see right here, we've spawned 3 plants, and after this cannon dies, what's going to happen is the turret is actually going to target your plants first before minions. So anytime you spawn seeds here, or if you're just overflowed and you have 2 seeds, it's really good for you to just spawn plants. It allows you to tank turret shots really, really easily, and it will then allow you to just do more damage because your wave will be alive a lot longer. And then because of the fact that we have so much pressure and we've been chipping away at this plate the entire time, and they're trying to find a window, despite the fact that we have no ultimate up, we're actually able to trade really, really easily. So we force the flash flay, we put the snare on everybody right here. We end up just burning our ignite, putting our Q onto the AD carry, and just making sure there's a ton of damage on him. And you can kind of see the dividends of the fact that we're such a high level and the fact that we're doing a good job getting plates for our AD carry, as he just basically obliterates him. And then after that, it's just kind of an easy burn afterwards. So making sure that you just have a ton of damage from multiple sources is always really helpful for you in the Zyra lanes. And that's why playing for those plates is so good, because it just accelerates both you and your AD carry so far ahead of them that you can continuously play aggressively and slowly but surely burn down the turret. Any questions before we move away from laning phases and into a couple of teamfight breakdowns, or things that you guys are kind of curious about or maybe still have questions about for laning for Zyra? Any tips for laning against Zyra? Yeah. Number one is be mindful of the plants. Wherever the plants are, you need to kind of make sure that you're not just getting hit by a Q and the plant spawn itself. Like Zyra's Q range is relatively short. I think it's like 500 or 600 range, so it's basically playable in terms of every other spell's range. So if they're in range of you, you're in range of them kind of deal. Also, Zyra's really squishy in the early stages, so if you just make sure you preserve your HP, get hit 2 or 3 on whatever all-in champion you are, and then just go on Zyra, you can kill her pretty dang fast. Also, there's like really good timings between all of her spells. So like you kind of see, Zyra Q has 6 to 8 second cooldown, especially in the early stages. So anytime that Zyra, uses Q, then you can run through the lane and clear out those seeds by walking over them. But a lot of times what people make the mistake of is just seeing seeds and then just running over them immediately before waiting for the Q cooldown. So those are probably things that a lot of people struggle with. It's very easy for Zyra to chain feed. So it's kind of, you're kind of managing on a tightrope a lot of the time, how your laning phase goes. If you can get the push and harass people under the turret, then you can kind of crush people. But if you can't get the push going and you're playing defensively and reactively, then the champion struggles a lot more. So next we're going to talk about is dragons. This is going to be a little bit reminiscent of our Malachi class a little bit, which is we want to be 2 dragons before people, kind of in the same way that setting up saplings is a good thing. Having our passive spawn seeds or just being able to harass people as you scoot backwards is always going to be an advantage. So usually you're going to have Leandries, Lucidity Boots, maybe you end up getting to the Demonic depending on your length of game. And right now what I want you to just pay attention to is where people are standing and how we're going to use all of our spells. So we'll kind of run through it once by light commentary, and then we'll break down a couple of things that are going on. So obviously, first off, we make sure that we're controlling the vision in the space, spawning seeds and everywhere that we can, and just forcing people out of these corridors. So because of the fact that we force them out of the corridors, all of them have gone to the bottom side, which is the correct thing to do. So the main things to pay attention to in team fights like this is just making sure you use your ultimate to split fights. Even if sometimes you can't always get really great ultimates, what's really important is making sure that your ulti breaks up fights and disrupts a lot of people. And then afterwards, you can kind of just sit there and spawn saplings or seeds on whoever you want. So main thing to note is for dragon fights, number 1, control space. So making sure you're here first, you're, holding these corridors, spawning plants, harassing people, making it really tough for people to come in. So they actually do the right thing, but not everyone will do the right thing, which is go through the bottom side, because I actually don't have full control of the bottom side. So when you fight in open-ended spots, what we want to do is pay attention to both our plant spawns and where people are going. So a lot of times it's really important for you to just split up the fight. So for example, I'm sure everyone's had this scenario where, okay, maybe you're playing Leona or Alistar and you go in, and then a spell happens behind you that stops everyone from following up after that. That's kind of what we want to treat Zyra Ultimate like in most fights. There's also great opportunities where maybe you connect a snare on someone really important and you ulti and just kill them. That's a totally fine way to use the ultimate. But this is a good example of just learning how to split fights up, even if you can't get a sweet ultimate that hits a ton of people. So you can kind of see right here, we're just posturing, you're just hitting Qs on whoever we can. The fight starts happening, we scoot back a little bit, because we can't get into this space because we'll just end up dying to these ultimates right here. And now what's really important is spacing. So you see how a lot of players are surging forward this way? It's really important that we just make sure that we split up the fight. So we use our snare right here and we ulti. So what you've now done is look at this, look at the landscape of the fight. Now all three of these players can't push through this location with their tanks, and now their tanks are isolated. So that's basically what's happened in this scenario, is all their tanks are isolated, which then unlocks our AD carry to kind of just burn whoever he wants, and then slowly start pushing through. One of the worst things that you can have happen in a team fight is letting everyone get through and connect to the targets all at once. We want to make sure that we're using our ultimate to split up fights after we've controlled space in that sense. And then after that, it's kind of very simple, because once you've had like the initial fight, you're just mostly spawning Qs from long range and just harassing people unless they jump in. So next we'll look at kind of a different oriented fight where maybe you don't quite have control of the space and you have to react to a lot more different things and variables that are going on. So for example, right here, we're actually going to be doing a dragon on the earlier side of things at 17 minutes. So this is actually a great example of, you know, if you hit the snare, then you can just dump ultimate on whoever you want. But a lot of it is about controlling your space too and making sure we're just spawning plants. One of the main reasons why a lot of people struggle with champions like Zyra and Nami, etc. is it's mostly position based. We want to make sure that our position is in a good spot where it's really hard for people to jump on us and gain value from it. So, as you've kind of just seen all of the fight, I'm basically untouched in most of the fight because of good positioning and making sure we're going in and out of fights. So, most important things to kind of take away from this fight are as follows. Number one is if you do have control of the space and you see people approaching, using your snare is really great. And if you catch any carries, just dump your ultimate immediately because it's just going to do a lot of damage and CC people. By locking everybody up, it guarantees everyone is able to engage on this player and score the kill. But the important thing to actually take away from this is actually what I do afterwards. So you kind of see right here, we're going to, score, we're DPSing this, I'm scooting back a little bit, reinforcing this location, and we hit the snare, and we ulti. But the most important thing I want you to pay attention to is how I've transitioned positionally wise. So now I've moved all the way up into this location. So it's actually impossible for anyone on this side of the map who's collapsing on this fight to actually gain access to me, because I can then just scoot back and then stand behind my teammates and let them reinforce me. So because of that, it's just impossible for me to get jumped on. So we've dumped all our spells, and look at how far away I am. And the most important thing is that we're just waiting for our spells to come off cooldown and not doing anything to risk our positioning. Since there's another form of CC that goes off, perfect, we can snare on that. And we spawn one plant there. And then afterwards, we use our Q, we spawn another plant. And you kind of see how all of these plants are just DPSing, and I'm really hard to access. Most of the players have to run through one or two of my teammates to get access to me. And that's what we really want to pull away from these kinds of fights, is just learning how to stay alive and just spawn plants. So stay alive, boom, we spawn another ranged plant, that ranged plant's hitting. Cool, so we're coming over to this location, we use a snare right there, and then we're spawning another ranged plant right here. And then we're just scooting back again and again. This keeps us alive. We have a seed spawn right here, we Q right here, and we just score a bunch of kills. A lot of team fighting for you as Zyra is just making sure you stay alive the whole time. The longer you stay alive, the more seeds and Qs that you can spawn, and the more valuable you become in a team fight. So making sure that we're just kind of at max range where there's no danger coming towards us, and being able to harass them with just your Q long range will be really great. This is why Liandry's and why I like this build just in general, is that you're not super reliant on having snares carry your fights. In fact, a lot of what carries your fights is just Q spawning plants and having them burn people down. So finally, kind of concluding to something is going to be Baron fights. So we're going to actually have a fight where, as you can kind of see on our minimap, not all of my teammates are quite here yet. So learning how to disengage and kite out in team fights is going to be a really important tool for you to have, because you're not always going to be able to start fights where you snare a carry and kill them, or have a teammate run in and dive for you. So this is going to be mostly teaching you about how to position where you can't get jumped on while still getting good harass. So as you can kind of see right here, we're just mostly spawning plants, using our snare, and splitting up engage a lot of the times. So in scenarios where you don't quite have everyone there at the same time, sometimes you have to use your ultimate a little bit in a different way. And we're kind of just standing max range and just harassing anyone that we possibly can. After that, we just use our snare right here, and you kind of see we're just standing max range, just burning down whoever gets in our way, and then reinforcing this fight down here, making sure that we use our Q and then use our root and score another kill. So what I want you to really take away from these kinds of team fights is sometimes you need to use ultimates to disengage the engage. So first off, we're going to stand over in this concave right here because my teammates are coming from this location and we know that most of the players are here. Next is just spawning a plant from max range. As you can see, I'm not running in trying to snare somebody. We're just utilizing the extender range. So this is my range plus this is plant range. So because of that, we're hitting players all the way over here, despite being all the way over here and hard to engage on. After that, once the snare hits, we know that someone wants to usually engage. So a lot of times, one of the best ways to know when to use your snare and ultimate is to just acknowledge what enemy players can do to jump in. So Malphite ultimate, Alistar combo, Leona engage, a hook, a binding. These are kind of indicators of when fights are probably going to start if they connect to anybody. So because I see this snare happen, you kind of see me, I'm walking forward to make sure that these players can't engage nearly as well. A lot of times what you want to do when it comes to your root is you want to root and have them walk into the root. You don't want to be rooting where they're already in range. So you kind of see right here, we're rooting where they're walking through. And we're going to use the ultimate, and look at this ultimate. It stops all of these players from reinforcing and jumping onto my teammate that's trying to get engaged on. Plus, your ultimate actually does a ton of damage. So you can kind of see right here that it's doing 229 damage to each of them. It's going to put Liandry's on them. It will knock them up if they walk through it. So sometimes you can't always get like the super plant, the super plant combo for your ulti. Sometimes you just need to use the ulti to, once again, split up that fight. Make engage difficult for the enemy players. Because remember, once their engage is down, boom, now it's your opportunity to do whatever you want. And you can kind of see right here, we just use a snare on whoever comes in, flash out of the Morgana ultimate, and you can kind of see that our plants are just constantly going off and doing harass damage to whoever we can. And then, once again, using our snare on, people at max range where they're walking into rather than trying to walk up to them and use a guaranteed snare. Same thing, using our Q at max range and then just snaring off of that. So a lot of your team fight breakdowns come down to making sure that you're trading your ultimate out for stopping, engage, and splitting up the fight. If that Gwen had kept going forward, then she would have been able to connect, but no one else would have been able to follow up on her, which would then make her an isolated target, and it becomes really easy to win a fight once it's 4v5 and they're down engage tools. So you guys have any questions or anything else that you'd like me to maybe touch on for Zyra that maybe I didn't already get to?
When you're playing the Dragon and Baron fight, would you have played them differently if you were going the burst build?
Would you have played it differently if you were going the burst build? No. You pretty much wouldn't change anything about it. You're pretty much still trying to do the same things where, okay, an engage occurs, so you let the engage occur and you split it. So for example, like the Gwen dashing in, right? I want to use my snare on the Gwen and ulti, and because the Gwen is trying to engage or whatever, and that means that no one can follow up and help because of all that circled space that we've kind of stopped. So if you're using the Ludens build, if you're using the Liandry's build, etc., it doesn't really matter. Your play pattern should pretty much kind of be the same, which is want to snare ulti to break up the fight, and then, as the fight is a little bit more skirmish heavy, I guess you would say, where, maybe only 2 or 3 people are alive, etc., you're kind of just playing max range, using your Q to harass, and then anyone that runs in or maybe gets CC'd by your teammate that makes it an easy snare, then you're going to use your snare that way. And a lot of times you're just going to sit on one plant the entire time. So it's kind of like, oh, you have 2 plants, use a QW. And then anytime otherwise, you're probably just sitting on the snare and a plant if you're trying to ideally fight. Unless you see a lot of damage potential, then you can spawn another Q plant. You'll do more damage to the people engaging if you run the electrocute build and you snare, ulti, etc. But you'll do a little less damage on the tail end. And then if you run the Leandry's build, then you'll do more damage like poking and getting into position better. And you'll do a little bit less damage when you snare ulti combo people. That's kind of like how the trade-off works, but the play pattern should pretty much be, kind of the same in that sense. Basically, the electrocute and like the Sorcs shoes thing gives you kind of the kick though, where if I play the Leandry's build and I snare ulti, I'll just show you. Like when we snare ulti the AD carry right here, right? When he walks in or whatever, if I was running Sorcerer shoes, he's almost dead. If I'm running Sorcerer shoes and like I have a Ludens completed or whatever, this player's almost dead. Whereas like the Leandry's does like 50-60% of his health. But then like he's kind of out of commission anyways, the argument maybe you'd present. So these are opportunities where like if you ran the electrocute and you ran Sorc shoes, Ludens, you'd blow this guy up instantly by yourself. So if you feel like you can catch a lot of people, or there's just a lot of squishy players, that's the thing too, right? So maybe you're just in a game where there's just 4 assassins. So, catching an AD carry isn't even necessary because there's so many squishy melee champions that you have the opportunity to blow up. So then the build is good that way, right? So that's kind of like the differentiation in terms of power level for the 2 builds in that sense. Thank you so much for coming out, guys. Really appreciate it.